A chord substitution describes a case where one chord can be substituted for another playing the same role. In this lesson, I will show you some substitutions which are often used and demonstrate each. Let me begin, as always, with an example. Here is a simple C major 7 to F major 7 to G dominant 7 to back to C major 7 progression in the key of C major. So what I'm doing here is I'm playing a tonic, subdominant, dominant to tonic. However, I could substitute some of the chords as follows. I've swapped the F major 7 with a D minor 7, or a more maybe advanced form, D minor 13, because they both play a subdominant role. And I also swapped the G dominant 7 with a B flat 9, again because they both play the same role, in this case a dominant role. Now, in this course, we've already encountered the concept of chord substitutions, but just haven't called it that. Remember that when we construct chords on a scale, let's say the C major scale, there are several chords that fit into each role, tonic, subdominant, or dominant. For example, if we construct our chords on the C major scale, so we have C major 7, D minor 7, E minor 7, F major 7, G dominant 7, A minor 7, B half diminished, and all the way up to C major 7 again, then C major 7, E minor 7, and A minor 7 all play the role of the tonic and are therefore interchangeable from a, let's call it a functional harmony perspective. Similarly, the D minor 7 and F major 7 both play a subdominant role and can be substituted for one another. And finally, the G dominant 7 and the B half diminished both play dominant roles and are again interchangeable. They can be substituted. In our subsequent examples, I'm going to focus on chord substitutions that are outside those built on the simple scale degrees. And I will group them into three obvious groups: dominant, tonic, and subdominant. Now, the first group of substitutions are chords that play a dominant role in the major scale and can therefore be substituted for either the dominant fifth. So again, if we are thinking about the C major scale, you can substitute them for the G dominant 7th, built on the 5th degree, or the half diminished 7th, meaning the half diminished chord built on the 7th degree, which in this case is a B half diminished. This is probably the largest and most diverse group of substitutions. As before, we're going to, throughout this lesson, take the simple 1, 2, 5, 1 progression and substitute out the G dominant 7 for different chords. So we're going to have this simple progression. And I'm going to swap out, in this section, the G7 chord. This is the dominant role. The first dominant substitution I'll present is the minor 4th. So we can substitute the 5th with a minor 4th. And this can be a minor 7th or a minor major 7th or a minor 6/9. And let's see how this sounds. The minor 4th in the C major scale is an F minor, and we can play an F minor major 7, for example. And here's how it's going to sound. So this substitution provides an unmistakable melancholy sound to the progression. It's quite beautiful. Another dominant substitution is the dominant flat seventh. This is sometimes called the backdoor dominant. So in the key of C major, the flat seventh is a B flat, and the dominant flat seventh is a B flat dominant 7. Usually you would either play, instead of just a simple B flat dominant 7th, a B flat 9, or maybe a B flat 13th chord. Both would do quite well. And let's have a listen to how it sounds. Interesting and quite effective. The most famous dominant substitution is the tritone substitution, whereby any dominant 7th chord can be swapped by a dominant 7th chord which is a tritone away. A tritone is an interval with 6 semitones. So for example, if you have a G dominant 7th chord, you take the root and you go either down or up, doesn't matter, you're going to get the same note. If you go down a tritone, which is 6 semitones, you go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, you get a D flat, and you can play a D flat dominant 7th. You can of course embellish it with extensions. For example, here I was playing a D flat 13th sharp 11. Now this sort of substitution leads to chromatic movement, which is quite pleasing. And it can be extended to cases where, for example, you tonicize any chord. Let me demonstrate. Let's take this original progression, C major 7, D minor 7, G7, C major 7, and tonicize the D minor 7 with a 2-5-1. So now we have two dominant 7th chords here, the A dominant 7 and the G dominant 7, both of which play dominant roles in their respective scales. And we can swap them out for their tritone substitutions. So instead of an A, we can play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, an E flat dominant 7, and instead of the G, we can play a D flat dominant 7. So this might sound something like this. Not too shabby. I've used a 13 sharp 11 chord for both cases. Now it's interesting to note why tritone substitutions work. It's because the original and the substituted chord share their most important degrees, the 3rd and the 7th. Let me show you. For a G dominant 7th, the 3rd is a B and the 7th is an F, right? And for a D flat dominant 7, the 3rd is an F and the 7th is a B. So we get the same two notes, just swapped, inverted, a B and an F. So this is why dominant or tritone substitutions work so well. The last dominant substitution I'll point out is a diminished 7th substitution. Basically, the diminished 7th chord built on the 7th degree of the major scale plays a dominant role. So in a C major scale, the 7th degree is a B, and we can build a B diminished 7th chord. It's very similar to the B half diminished. Now it's fully diminished. And we can use it in our original progression. For example, Now it's using an inversion, but it's still a B diminished seventh. By the way, note that a B diminished seventh is the same as an A flat diminished seventh, the same as an F diminished seventh, and is the same as a D diminished seventh. Just pointing this out. Now, it's not very surprising this substitution works, because a B diminished seventh is really just a G dominant 7 flat 9 without the bass. So here's a B diminished seventh, and here's a G dominant 7 flat 9. So they're pretty similar, and you're just omitting the G. This also means that you can play something that looks like this whenever you see a G dominant 7th. So you can play so this would be either you can view it as a G dominant 7 flat 9 or as a B diminished 7 over a bass of G, or maybe an F diminished 7th over the bass of G, or a D diminished 7th over a bass of D. They're all the same, right? The connection between dominant and diminished chords runs deep in jazz theory, and we'll come back to explore it in subsequent lessons dealing with diminished chords and the bebop scale. This will provide us a completely different view of harmony. This approach was promoted strongly by the late and great pianist Barry Harris, a very gifted player, but I'm running a bit ahead of myself here. This will come in a later lesson. So I've given you 4 examples for dominant substitutions. Let's look at a tonic substitution. There really aren't, there's really not such large a range as there is for dominant ones. I'll give you one example. And in the C major scale, as I've said, both the first, the minor third, and minor sixth degrees all play a tonic role. Another chord that plays a tonic role, kind of like a delayed tonic role, is the half diminished flat fifth degree. So in the key of C major, the fifth degree is a G, the flat fifth is an F sharp, and the half diminished looks like this. It's an F sharp half diminished. This substitution is famously used in one of the most well-known jazz standards, Somewhere Over the Rainbow. Let me play it once with the substitution, once without, and then once with it. And now with it. Gives it a very nice delayed feel. Let's talk a little bit about subdominant substitutions. As far as those go, there really aren't that many ones outside those that we've already discussed. So we've said that the chord built on the major fourth, or the major fourth in the major scale, and the minor second are both subdominants. Some people will argue that the minor fourth is actually not a dominant substitution, but really a subdominant substitution. And this is kind of an interesting point that's worth dwelling a little bit on. So in the key of C major, this would be an F minor of some sort. You can play an F minor major, or an F minor 6-9, or sometimes an F minor 7. And let me show you what we've previously played. We've substituted this for the G7, for the dominant role. So that was but we can also substitute it in the subdominant role instead of the F major 7 or the D minor 7. So it sounds okay in both roles. Which one is it? Is it a subdominant substitution or a dominant one? Right? And different people will argue in different directions. For example, remember how I mentioned that a B diminished 7 or an F diminished 7, which are the same, can be substituted for the G7. Well, if you look at an F diminished 7, it looks a lot like an F minor 6. Just this guy is different. So this seems to suggest that the F minor would be a dominant substitution, just one note different. But on the other hand, the F diminished has a tritone interval in it, the F and the B, which the F minor 6 doesn't have. And a tritone really strongly resolves to the tonic, like this. So all of these are valid arguments, and they go to show that minor fourth chords are a bit of both. They're both subdominant and dominant substitutions. And this also goes to show something important about music theory. Don't get caught up in it too deeply. Not all music can be ascribed formal structures and mathematical rules, and embrace the fact that a minor fourth can be used in both cases and use it to your advantage. Let's put all of our substitutions to use. So let's take a progression that I've already previously played in this lesson. C minor 7, E minor 7, A dominant 7, D minor 7, G dominant 7, C major 7. Now let's do a bit of substituting, or let's swap out some chords. We can play something like this. So what I've done here is I've done a flat 5 half diminished substitution for the tonic, played the E minor 7, then did a tritone substitution on the A7 like we've done. Then I've substituted the G dominant 7 for or we could think about this as substituting the D minor 7 also with an F minor major 7, and this goes to the backdoor dominant, this B flat 13th, which goes back to the tonic. Sounds pretty neat. And if you want to take this further, well, why don't we treat this E flat 13 sharp 11th chord as a 5 in some 2-5 round progression and add its minor second, which would be a B flat minor 11, say, or something. So we can do something like and this sort of shows you how versatile all of these ideas are. And you can see how things are starting to come together from all of the lessons we've gone over so far. And this brings us to the conclusion of today's lesson. I hope you've learned something interesting about substitutions and that you'll get to use them in your own playing, and I will see you next time.